Happy full moon, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers. How do you say that in
Proost.
African? Oh, proost, but in
Proost is Dutch. Afrikaans, we say a lot of weird things.
we're cool with weird here, I think.
Laat hy val waar hy wil.
Waar hy wil?
Laat hy val waar hy wil.
Right. Just rolls off your tongue so beautifully. Well, I thought maybe we'd start. I could just read. So today we pulled the card of the Lovers. So that will be our that's what we'll be circumambulating. And I thought I might read the passage from this deck, and then also share from the Greek mythology, read about the lovers in a different deck and what it had to say. So it says, the lovers, like the half moon with half light and half darkness, or two butterflies in communion, one resting, one fluttering in the air. The Lover's card brings us harmonizing dualities. This card summons the reciprocal dynamics of relationships. This can be a connection with someone, with yourself, with a group, with ideas, or any other relationship. Here we take a moment to reflect on the blending of energies and deeper understanding. While you hold your space, it is important to truly know your space, to trust your heart, and to know how to be rooted in it. This is a reminder to listen to your truth and feel grounded in your values. Alignment with your values brings you closer to wholeness. So that's one reflection. And then when I was looking at this other deck called the Mythic Tarot, it was bringing forward the story of the Judgment of Paris. And basically a fight had broken out between Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena. And Zeus called him Paris, this young, handsome, strapping lad, to decide who he chose, like who was the most beautiful of the three goddesses. And at first, Paris refused. He had to give this apple to determine who was the victorious goddess. And he first tried to slice it up, and Hermes was like, nope, you've got to choose. So Aphrodite offered him the most beautiful woman. Athena offered him the wisdom of a powerful warrior. And Hera offered him rulership of the world, to be able to rule the world. And Paris, being a young, virile man, chose Aphrodite. And then the Trojan War ensued. It ended up being Helen of Troy. And the rendition was basically warning that the lovers is sort of the fool's journey. And it's sort of this duality, this tension between free will and determinism. And it's a card honoring sort of initiation, in that we sometimes take that we make the foolish choice and things collapse, but that's how we learn. That's how we have to find our way. And so that's a very interesting rendition, kind of different than what I know comes alive when the phrase lovers, the word lovers comes up. So throwing that right in the middle.
That was an interesting addition, the last bit that you had, because it comes right after the Hierophant card, which is like indoctrination. From what I understand, like I'm not a tarot expert, but it's like going through that indoctrination, that like tradition that was like forced on someone, kind of, and then like having your opportunity with the Lover's card to kind of make your own choice as to what your values are now, or what your tradition is. So
I just want to go back to the original, the card that we pulled, and then two things, just both things that you mentioned. Like, I want to get back to my beer because not only is it the fool, the Zot, it's also the brewery is called the halve maan, which means the half moon. And I think in the original card, you actually mentioned that it's 2 half moons. So it's a very appropriate beer that I'm consuming.
Yeah, well, if we're talking about the thing we're bringing to the table, it's Gemini full moon today, so that's associated with the card that we're talking about, the Lover's card, because the element of this card is air as well, and the ruling planet of this card is Mercury, just like Gemini. So I thought that was interesting. I want to kind of explore the sibling rivalry of this card because I thought that was really interesting, something that I found. Not just romantic kind of love, but also just like any kind of intimate love, any kind of intimate partnership, and decisions about those existing relationships. So, yeah, I have themes of like Cain and Abel coming up. I think Set and Osiris, or those kinds of sibling rivalries are coming up for this full moon in Gemini. And it's interesting because it's the moon right now is with Mars. You can see Mars in the sky with the moon. So tonight when you look up, it'll be kind of a reddish star. And so Mars is the planet of war. And you just mentioned like the Trojan War too. So that seems to be like a theme that I'm pulling, is conflict around this partnership. And so, and the choice here being actually a sacrifice someone has to make, as opposed to getting to choose the shiny object of the, lover kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really resonating with me. There's been a theme in my life that's sort of been present of actually like sisterhood and the duality of that bond and that closeness and that intimacy, and then also the other side of that, the shadow of competition, cattiness, women trying to kind of tear each other down, and jealousy and things like that. So how those two dance together. Yeah.
Something came up for me this week as we were texting. Because I think, Holly, you mentioned the cauldron. And it popped into my mind, and we're all about war and rivalries among sisters and that. And I know I have a book, the Birthday Mysteries or something. It's really it's something that I really like it. And also when it refers to the relationships. And I know, Sarah, because your birthday is the same as my ex-husband's birthday. So I know our relationship, and it's called The Cauldron. The title of our relationship is The Cauldron.
I have to tell you that my niece asked for a cauldron for Christmas.
Oh.
Oh my. The orderly chaos. I like how everything is connected.
But the funny thing about that is we're supposed to be enemies. That is also the yeah. Because you have like all the relationships is either marriage or friendship or enemies or all those things, and we're supposed to be enemies. So that fight that popped up in my mind as well.
Very interesting. I mean, I don't foresee that happening, but even discussing things is a way it manifests. So for you to have revealed that to me, now I know something is there. And so that's an awareness that I can have, that you have based on experience. And now, yeah, that's a interesting, because you brought it to light. So now it's manifested here in the physical realm just by having mentioned it. So very cool.
When Holly mentioned the shadow side of sisterhood, I feel like, yeah, I have to mention that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in that. I mean, we can tear that part of, we can dig into that a little more, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this incredibly rivalrous relationship I've had in the past, with a friend, a female friend, and like I just couldn't stand this woman, and I also couldn't tear myself away from her either. In a way, like it felt like we were really entangled, probably in a much deeper. I have a mentor who talks about having soul contracts with people, that sometimes we and I sense that's actually the case here. This sense that at some other place in time there were bonds made and a contract formed, and we come across these people who maybe we actually completed our contract with and are here to really support us along the way, or others that we haven't completed our contract with, or that there was a violation of this soul contract. And so, when you get that feeling of like, there's something really familiar about this person. Um, and so my sense was with this particular woman, there was a soul contract there. I wanted to run away. I really wanted her out of my life. But there was some gravitational pull that wouldn't allow me to escape the relationship. We had to take our distance. It was really ugly, the break in our friendship. But it's probably been one of the most powerful lessons of my life, because after what my teacher called we were doing was work without words, that we needed that distance to really sink in and go on a journey with ourselves. And so actually our relationship was working in that silence, in that cauldron. And we then sort of something came alive. I felt like I needed to reach out to, it was unresolved. It just felt really sticky, and I just couldn't. I needed to resolve this tension between us after maybe like 3 or 4 years of not talking. And it was probably one of the most profound, like I just had an aha moment one day where I was walking and I could feel in my body what it was like for her, the way I was treating her. Like I couldn't make that move before. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is why she's been behaving this way. Like I can actually feel the impact I've been having on her and how I've been, which I couldn't see before. And so she's, this is that cliche saying, your enemies becoming your teachers. And she has taught me one of the most powerful lessons I've ever received, embodied, like really feel my bones. And so I just wanted to presence that as part of this tension of the lovers being harmonious, but also being enemies. That there's actually something incredibly potent about someone breaking you.
Something. Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to repeat what Holly said, something really potent about someone breaking you. I would eventually like to go deep into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to explore that like relationship between jealousy and the siblings, and I'm not really sure where to go with it, but yeah, I recognize this theme a lot, and so I was more curious about, I don't know, ways to not diminish yourself when you are, when you really do care about somebody that sees something in you that they don't see in themselves. It's very difficult to go for it all the way, like do the big things that you know that you feel destined to do when your heartstrings are tugging at this leaving people behind part of it, like leaving people in the dust. So yeah, that's just something that comes up for me. And I don't know, it's just really hard to work with without the conflict coming up. It's like you kind of want to be that drill sergeant and tell people ways that they can do things, but then like you don't offer help when people don't ask for help. They won't even really, execute whatever it is that you're suggesting. So there's just this kind of festering sore that there's no way to heal it. You can't do anything about it. And because you don't do anything about it, you feel like it's being projected on you that it's your fault. It's your fault that that wound is even there. And you can't heal it. The other person has to put some ointment on it and, whatever. So, yeah, I think that's a feeling that we don't address. And so just wanted to illuminate that thought.
I don't know. I'm kind of listening a lot, and there's nothing too cohesive forming, even if I'm like picking up all the threads. But there's something that you just said, Sarah, about like relationship with someone else, where like you leave them behind or not. And I remember having this conversation at some point, with someone about like how does it work? How does it work in relationships? Like, if someone chooses to leave, I remember telling him like, oh, but if when it's a relationship, that choice is not yours anymore. Like, it has to be mutual to some extent. And I don't know, maybe there's something about that in the lovers, I'm not sure, but maybe there's a bit of that recognition that there has to be some sort of like surrender or compromise. I don't know what it is, but something about you're not an island, and your choices have all these repercussions and other levels, and your choice is not entirely yours to make. Like, it's distributed in this, with this other person or with this other friend or whatever. And yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I think some of what we said, whether it's jealousy or whether it's there's a bit of that, of that placing of some of ourselves in someone else, and then kind of not not taking responsibility over it. I don't know. It's interesting, but I don't have a clear thing yet, but this was the first thing that I was like, aha, maybe I should bring this up because there might be something there.
Yeah, I feel like that was a gift for me to receive. And what the thread I was tying it in was that initial myth about choice versus determinism, right? One person chooses, and then for the other person, it becomes kind of a non-choice if it's not a mutual. So that tension between choice and determinism, the both and there. And I love said about like something around along, and Sarah was echoing this too, about denying one's own kind of inner power somehow. Like, at least that's what I've experienced in relationships that have fractured, is that I have somehow abandoned my own quality or virtue or part of the self, part of me, and I projected it onto this other person. And that part of the rupture in relationships for me, of deep friendships and more romantic relationships, is often been a result that I have renounced and given away what I inherently have, and that the breakage is actually an invitation for me to reclaim that which I have denied within myself. So sometimes looking at this other, and there's so much projection that happens. And I find that a lot of my anger and ire is like actually really more of an inner dialogue that's being externalized to an extent. And so I guess some of that rupture is the journey needing to go from like this more horizontal space more into this vertical space. That's been one experience for me.
Yeah, that reminds me. I mean, I can't quote it exactly, but I know I shared this in journaling at some point. Like I was reading some Rilke, and he was saying something along those lines of like, oh, like I really want to, where I wish I were able not to see you as a mirror, but to see you as a window to something else. Right. So it's like it seems to me like that mirroring is like level A or something. like it's some early step of something, and it might be necessary because it seems like we all do it. So maybe it's like the baby steps of self-recognition. I don't know. Like you need to project into something else because some things you cannot recognize unless there's that distance that lets you see it outside. But yeah, I think that the love should push you beyond that, or I don't know exactly how it happens. I don't think it's particularly easy to do, but that's part of the journey.
Yeah, and the card, when I was doing some research on it, there is this importance, there's this emphasis of union with the divinity. And so to me, when you both were talking, that's what I was hearing, was that relationship with divinity. And there's like references to the Garden of Eden in it. The angel Raphael is there, so healing. So yeah, thought that was interesting that you brought that up too. That's what I hear from that.
There's a question coming alive for Lizelle, just because Sarah just beckoned in the Garden of Eden, and our lovely kind of theologian. There's a curiosity, if Lizelle, I don't know if this is something that you have to offer, but like your thoughts about Adam and Eve as lovers in the Garden of Eden in that story.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, because I was thinking what I'm hearing, the thread I'm hearing, is how ruptured our relationships are. And because of this rupture, and then not only horizontal rupture, but a vertical rupture, that complete. And because of this rupture, there's all this pain associated with relationships, and all this confusion, and all this separation. And it happened in the Garden of Eden, indeed. I mean, Adam and Eve was like perfectly happy in their naked innocence. And then they decided to, I don't know exactly what they decided to do, because I don't know what the original sin is, but something went wrong because of a human choice, that I know. And because that's something, immediately there was a rupture between Adam and Eve. He started blaming her for disobeying God. Between Eve and nature, she started blaming the snake. And between the divinity and Adam and Eve and nature, like, so this was ruptured, and this was ruptured. So for me, what that tells is, as long as human kind of have been telling stories, we felt this rupture, because it's one of our fundamental stories. So this rupture has been with us throughout our history.
I'm really loving this dance between fate, and choice. And that.
The crossroads.
Mhm.
Because some would say, if you, from a also again theological perspective, that it was fated, the rupture, because Christ was fated from before the world was. So the rupture was fated, but also the solution for the rupture was fated.
Oof. Meta crisis just.
I guess one thing that kind of keeps popping up for me, because we're using the word rupture a lot, and I was thinking about this. I mean, this is me connecting a lot of different things, but I was thinking about this the other day, because there's this bakery I really like, and I go there every single Saturday, and it's like my little mini pilgrimage every weekend. And I was thinking about how it's interesting that, like, like my little feet always cover the same path, and I was like imagining this like little, like, I don't know, like carving of that road. Every time I walk that path, it gets like a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, and it really reminded me of when I was like in school doing all these like architecture models. The best trick I ever learned for when you're cutting, like the pieces of wood and cardboard, is like, you don't want to go like super hard and try to cut it in one go, because you're gonna not be able to control the knife, and then it's gonna like go out of the path, and you're gonna end up with like cutting the wood in the wrong way. So it's much more sensible, and you actually have a lot of control and possibility for correcting path if you just do like extremely light, but you do it like over and over and over, and eventually you dig like enough that it just like splits up easily. And I was thinking about that a little bit, like that idea of like carving a path slowly by repetition of something, and having like this awareness as you do it, and then kind of letting, I don't know, the elements or nature or whatever it is, like keep carving that path for you, versus coming with this like planned force to try to just like get something in one go, and then you end up with this like lack of control of the rupture. And I'm not entirely sure how that connects to this, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I sense that thing of like of violence of something that is like this imminent thing, versus something that just develops over living something, over doing it over and over being in that process of that carving. And yeah, and I guess the contrast between that, because one of them for me has a lot of like possibility for correction, possibility for trying different things and seeing where it goes, whereas the other one is like you plan in advance exactly how you want it to be, then you go full force, and then I mean, sometimes you're lucky and it works out, but a lot of the times the knife will like slip and you might end up cutting yourself. That's actually the easiest way to get injured. So I'm not sure what that's leading, but that's been up in my head for a while.
I had this amazing image of the collective as you were speaking, in the sense also that like our neurons, there's that saying, what fires together wires together. So the brain also works like that. If you do something over and over again, it forms a path, and that we being the neurons, and the more we fire together, the more we will wire together, in the way you were explaining, Issa. That just came up for me.
Yeah, the relationship between like epiphany and like, I was just thinking about the epiphany that arises when you go slowly, like you kind of gradually make your way, like every day you just kind of show up and you kind of do this sort of tedious work little by little. And then sometimes you get that break. Then there's other times where, and I guess the sort of relationship with plant medicine was sort of coming alive, where you can do that whoosh, like really quick, and sometimes you get really lucky and get a massive insight, but you actually really haven't learned this other process that is so much more reliable and steady, I guess, or consistent, so to speak.
Yeah, okay. So now I've made a connection. So with allopathic versus homeopathic medicine. So homeopathic medicine or holistic medicine is a preventative measure. You do something daily to prevent the disease. You incorporate something into your diet, so it's supplemental to your diet. Whereas with most allopathic medicine, it's treat the symptoms, get it out of here quick. So that's a connection that I just made with the idea of showing up every day, the choices that you make. You are the choices that you make. So drawing that back to the card, the lover's card, it's all about when you're at a crossroads, which choice are you going to make? And so you always have to incorporate that higher wisdom. And for me, because I have gotten to use like all kinds of plant medicine after working at a health food store, and so that there's those kinds of acute plant medicines that can give you a message, but incorporating that message is what you're talking about, like taking that what you've learned and actually alchemizing that into your day and making that lesson a part of your day, as opposed to I just want to blast off every now and then. That's cool, like people want to do that, but if you're not actually building your character from that message, that's the, I would say, intent, because I subscribe to the idea that the plants are also sentient, or at least aware, and are giving us messages, and that's through our consumption of them, because that's nature kind of communicating with us. But I'll leave that alone and just say that, yeah, just showing up every day, making the choice, that's the character that you're building, as opposed to the quick fix, the more magnetic or like lusty kind of feeling, like, or indulgence, kind of moving towards that is only temporarily nice, and it's only going to be serving you in this moment. But what are you building towards? Is it that union with divinity, in that union with nature, or is it this desire to experience? Because that's what humans are here to do too. So you can just live the whole thing in experience, but the option is also there for you to build some virtuous traits to pass on, because that's going to move through time.
Well said.
Yeah, well, if we're thinking about us as neurons, then that even more so, it's like you're this neuron that's in charge of your own best thing. Whatever it is that you can best do, you have to embody that and exist as that, in order for there to be more adaptive neurons. If I don't know if I'm getting way too far into the vocabulary, but yeah.
The word cohesion popped up for me. I don't know if you can play with that.
Yeah, say more about that, Lizzo. Like, do
I
you have an
don't
image
know
or
anything more about that. The word just popped up in my mind. Cohesion. I don't even know what the definition is really. What's the definition of cohesion?
Well, if it downloaded, there's a reason. So let's see. Because that was kind of the issue that I was having. It says the action or fact of forming a united whole.
Okay.
That's so interesting.
Mm.
It says there's a physics example, the sticking together of particles of the same substance. The same. Wow.
To adhere, to stick, sticking together. It's the etymology there.
What fires together, wires together.
Yep.
The word cleave is coming up for me, which means to come together and split apart at the same time. The cleaving breasts, right? They're like coming together, but also apart.
Okay, I feel like that definitely takes us into that concept that Lizelle wanted to talk about earlier about how your lover or your partner can be the one that's your demise too. I think that was kind of like the line of it, but there's something there with together, but also separating. So I don't know if you had a prompt or if I even got it right, what you were saying that you wanted to go into further. Maybe it's all gone.
I think Holly's words that I wanted to delve deep in is how someone breaking us could be building us. That is the gist of it.
Yeah.
Just real quick, we'll go back to this, but just real quick, because whenever I look up words, I look at the etymology.
Yeah.
And it says that cohesive, like the adhesive and cohesive, like co means joint, like together, and then the adhesive has the same root as hesitation, actually. So sticking and hesitation have the same root, which is interesting to me because it I like that element of like maybe being in doubt together, or maybe being in uncertainty together. Like there's something interesting about that. And going back to what you said, it's not exactly the same thing, but one thing related mostly to memory that has been coming up for me, I don't know, the past few months, is the idea of like memory not being a perfect like ledger of everything, but memory also having that mutation element of misremembering things in order to allow change. And in that sense, it reminds me of that breaking to build kind of thing. Is like you need that element of decomposing, or like, I don't know, inserting like, yeah, variables or things that you wouldn't have considered, or that would just like, I don't know, make the landscape into something different, to, I don't know, change into something different. So yeah, that was more linked to memory, but it I think it reminds me of what you're saying about breaking to be built.
That's so resonant, especially with a lot of the work I do with people. The sense that actually the memories are dynamic, and a lot of times, it's like, I wish I had a time machine. Actually, you kind of do. It's amazing. You can go back into a memory and see it from so many different angles. And in doing so, you actually change the memory and the relationship to the memory, which in turn can also change your relationship to future memories, like future dreams. It can actually change the trajectory and dreams that you have. So I'm really resonating with this, the dynamic becoming of memories. This kind of can go into epigenetics even. The other thing that was really powerful, coming alive about that hesitation, how it's so natural. It's natural to not want to break. You think about a baby being born, and the hesitation, the lament when we come into this world, that it's so natural, it's so organic to not want to split apart. I don't want to split apart. I don't want to become something different. I don't know what this future identity holds for me. Who am I going to be in that? So maybe part of our journey is this is that kind of amor fati of when these ruptures come, or we are being invited and beckoned into change, to actually to kind of to be excited about that, or to be curious, to be to trust that whatever it is, that alchemical process that's happening, trust, yeah, um, is leading to greater cohesion, leading to coming together. Actually, the splitting apart is leading to a coming together.
Trust has been coming up for me like for quite a while now as well. And I had to think of the story of the fall again, the Garden of Eden. Isa, you mentioned uncertainty, and this may be me completely raping the theology of the Garden of Eden, but the reason why they chose to eat the fruit is because it promised knowledge of everything. So that certainty. It promised that certainty. And so for me, I feel that desire for certainty very strongly. So I don't say this lightly, but there's this embracing uncertainty and trust. Those two.
Well, as an astrologer, I have my own truth making mechanism.
Share it, sister.
It's been contributed to for thousands of years. Well, I honestly have to say that measure really does provide me this sense of certainty that is not safe. Because, you know, I've even had arguments in my head with people of, I know where Saturn's going to be next year. I know inevitably Saturn is going to move into Pisces. It's not going to move backwards. It's going to move forwards. I can predict that. And when you have a connection with something predictable like that, it does kind of give you this sense that other things are connected to that, without a doubt. I mean, we come here in this life, we're born and we die.
I just want to say the reason why they chose the fruit, they got the knowledge of good and evil so that they could be like God. So it also gives you the sense of control, power of being like God.
Yeah. So people compliment me on this gift that I have a lot, and I have to watch my that sense of having power, because it's really just a timing technique. I don't know if these archetypes are being read by me properly. Like, there's a lot to this that makes it less predictable. It makes it less that's why it can't be a science. It's all about how does this planet make you feel? So, and in combination with other planets and things. So there is some sort of sense, though, of union with the divinity. I even say that I consult the oracle. I go to the oracles. So, like, having that sense of subordination to something higher than me, I guess. There's still some temptation to be equal to that, and to be, able to provide people a fortune telling or whatever it is. So yeah, there's some temptation there with having power.
So how does that affect your relationship with trust?
So what I have written, actually, and I think that's, vulnerability. So the image of Adam and Eve, they're naked in this card. And so they're very vulnerable. And what I read was that they shape the container from which trust and confidence can emerge. So by being willing to give that trust away without knowing whether or not it's going to, come back to you in a good way, or like, offering your confidence. I don't know what's going to happen here, so I'm going to offer that up. So those things that we fear in partnership are things that we have to be willing to give. to shape that container of reciprocal giving.
That really harkens back to that initial sort of personal story I shared with my friend of the fear of giving something I didn't think I had to give. I didn't see in myself. I couldn't find. And my sense is all the stuff I was angry with her about was her actually trying to draw this out of me. Like I was very passive in the relationship, and I thought she was a total bitch, And I think what she was like trying to get me, like, get fucking angry, like, own that bitch, like, say what you want, don't hide away. And I was so uncomfortable. I was so afraid of that in me. I was so afraid of that. Um, yeah, I don't know how that weaves in with trust, but there's
Self-trust.
Yeah.
self-trust. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how, as soon as you said trust, I also had like this reaction. And I think it's because of that. Is like when we talk about change and everyone's like process or journey, like that's the thing that I feel like we struggle with a lot, is the being afraid of change because you don't know who you're going to be. So you need to have a degree of trust where you know that your core self will remain. Like there's things that are going to change beyond what you can possibly imagine, but there's some degree of you that you like, your essence that will change, that will stay, or might change, but it will still be you, or something like that. And but then you can't but to trust that that's going to happen, right? So yeah, I don't know, that's how I was thinking of trust when you brought it up. I was like, then it ties to self-trust, right? Of kind of, yeah, trusting that your true self or your core self or whatever it is, it's gonna stay there despite however much the environment might shift.
And trusting what needs to die will die.
I'm hesitant because of things I've read recently to even say that there's a core self that will persist. But there's definitely a trust that there's that saying, the bird is not afraid to sit on the branch because it knows if the branch breaks, it can fly. So more a trust in your capabilities to handle whatever changes will. But I also have a very strong sense that my own capabilities is not strong enough. I need the others.
Yeah, I think there's something to having that ability to trust yourself to choose those others, to decide who the others actually are. That's something I struggled with very, very badly right after I got out of my 10-year relationship. So I left very abruptly after having met people that I thought I could trust. And those people left me in the dark, just abandoned. And not only was I in like a new place because I had to leave my place over in Texas, but I was also alone because those people that had helped me, I will say, I'm glad I got out of the relationship, but those people that had helped me with that process left immediately after they realized who I was. They didn't know what to do with this person that had been so involved in a relationship that I became that person. And without that person as my balance, I was expressing all of his bad traits too. Bad, whatever. I was expressing a side of him that I had been combative towards for so long. that I'd embodied it and didn't even realize it. So yeah, I wasn't able to trust my ability to choose those people that would support me and that were on the same path as me. Because I think in that phase of life, all of those people were also in a transitory phase. I think all of those people were also leaving one very extreme situation and entering into a new extreme. And I just got really lucky that I have family that took me in and I didn't have to wonder. I didn't have to struggle. I didn't lose faith in life like some people will when you don't have that um catch, that net that catches you. Yeah, I couldn't think of like the word, but if you don't have that something to catch you in the bottom. So my deepest trust comes from the fact that I can have faith in my family always, even if I can't have faith in the people I choose. And so for some people, it's the reverse of that. They can only have faith in the people that they choose, and they can't have faith in family because that trust has been broken. So this concept of trust is really deep in this conversation.
Isa, I'm curious, what was the movement that you made?
No, I was opening curtains.
Opening curtains.
Yeah,
Explain.
or like the theater, you know, the curtains. Like kind of realizing that you were in a play in someone else's show, and
Yeah, that's
suddenly
that.
saw that there's a world outside of the stage.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking about trust and fate as well. You know, talking about trust in others. At some of my lowest moments of like having to deeply, deeply trust, like where I felt I had no human beings actually to, which wasn't true, but that sense of like, this is my battle. This is like between me and God, the universe, myself, me versus me. And wow, that's an interesting lover dynamic to think about, you know, loving yourself, right? That's a big thing, loving, forgiving, being a being a good lover to your body, mind as lovers, man, nature as lovers, that trusting yourself.
As Sarah was speaking, I had this intuition, but maybe I'm wrong. But Holly, you kind of confirmed it, that all four of us deeply know what it means to be alone, completely alone. And there's a gift in that as well, right? That's part of that amor fati, like loving the fact that you have been given that gift of knowing what it is to be completely deserted.
I couldn't help but think of Alone Together because we found each other. And that's the interesting thing, is when we decided to come together and do this, it wasn't because we've all had heartbreak, right? You know, so we're building something together that's to express love and to illuminate that part of the consciousness, to model what this kind of conversation can be like, where we're yes anding and caring, also having, you know, disagreements, and there it's still like cradled in love, because we all know the being alone part was what was the hardest to sit through. And when I found the journaling group, one of the first things that my breakout buddy said to me was, I've been looking for the others. And I was like, me too. And what you realize is it's because you're on this path that requires a relationship with the self. And so building that relationship with the self, sometimes there's, you know, there's points in that dark night of the soul where you're by yourself. And to know that other people are going through that, you're alone together. And it, you can still do all the work that you need to do, but we have this nice tool, the internet, where we can, communicate across long distance. And I always have you guys in my back pocket, and that's a sense of comfort for me.
Mm.
Yeah, I feel called to share. It's interesting. This is coming up. So when I first started kind of collecting journaling, I had a bunch of kind of psychedelic kind of things arising, bubbling up from the cauldron. And one incredibly consistent and potent image was myself as Eve being banished into the wilderness. I went into this unbearable image, and the unbearable image was me as Eve, banished from the Garden of Eden and in child's pose in this desert landscape, barren desert, red dirt, very similar to kind of how it looks out here sometimes. And feeling so alone. And there was always this like little gnome like next to me who would be bouncing up and down and saying, I'm here, and I would like kind of, very cute, thank you, little gnome. You can't help me. Like I'm really, I've been banished to an extent. Anyways, it's just really interesting. So Eve's been this archetypal guide for me in this time in life, this epoch of life. And I've really been noticing how she has been changing, evolving. Like she's been getting to stand up, and actually like life is growing everywhere. And it's starting to become so green and lush. And you all are a part of that garden. I mean, it's just been such a magical journey. And so I just wanted to bring in Eve and my deep love for the three of you and others who really helped me transform this barren, lonely place into something that is beyond anything, beyond the gnome's wildest dreams, fertile, lush, magical. So really love you all.
Ditto. Likewise. There's actually a passage in one of the prophets, I can't remember now, I should really read the Bible again. The desert will become a garden. I will look it up and send you the link.
Wow. That's really, well, it's just a little synchronistic for me, because there was this project that I wanted to go work on that was called Greening the Desert. And so it's this man that's, well, a group of people really, that have acquired land in Jordan, and they're using permaculture techniques to develop it into a forest again, a food forest. And this is now, because I wasn't able to do that trip, it's something that I really want to do here on this property, is like, cultivating the land and creating something lush and abundant from barren. My grandpa got rid of all the trees in this yard because, well, to be fair, we're in Florida and hurricanes are a thing. But, but that's even going back to what Issa was saying about being overly prepared or trying to take the brute force approach. It's like, all right, well, we can prevent trees from going through the house for hurricanes for the rest of eternity if you want, but we won't have any food in the yard. So there's a risk there of planting, trees. So anyway, that was like an aside, but
the image also came to my mind of the four of us walking the path to Issa's bakery, over and over again, like just slowly cutting into this trust we are building, and the ability to trust that we are building by walking the route together over and over again, slowly and steadily.
yeah, it feels kind of like that's what these conversations are too. Just like any interaction that I have with people on a regular basis, it feels like we're emphasizing pathways in our mind and building and rebuilding and working out that muscle. It's almost like going to the mental gym.
It's interesting because I remember reading this at some point. That's kind of what humans do, though. Like, if you look at the world, at the built matter at some sort of, I don't know, molecular level, or you don't even need to get there, like, to see it as everything is just one thing, really. And to be able to see two separate entities and walk from A to B, and as you do that, a path emerges, right? Like, paths are not in nature by default. They emerge as like beings move through them. So yeah, I don't know, that to me is like, it's like the I don't know, the cornerstone of being alive is creating paths to some extent, because nothing else will really do it.
Yeah, it's amazing because out here there's so many paths, and they're called desire paths because they're paths created by animals. And then it's really fun to walk them because sometimes you have to get really low like the animals. So you actually have to sort of be the boar as you're following the path. But I just love that naming the desire path, that, and they're leading to home, or they're leading to food, but they're almost always leading to a home. And that's what it feels like, and this collective journey towards homemaking. And what was coming up as well was just this gratitude, actually, for, just like Lizelle was saying, that there's this sense that we've all been broken, broken intensely. And I just really feel a lot of gratitude, actually, for all the people that helped break me so that I could come and find refuge here. Like, all those people were actually pointing me towards home by that breaking. That's that finding of the others. So y'all want to come out here and create a desire path?
I love Desire Path. It's an awesome name. It's an awesome name, Desire Path. Following the arrows.
Yeah, following the arrows. So what's coming up for me, because I just reviewed episode 6 of Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, and I'm really interested in biology. That's what my degree is in. So thinking about the most parsimonious path, or the path that scientists will agree is the way that makes most sense, that this evolved this way. But there's so much mystery in that process because there's so much missing from the fossil record. So if you think about fossils, they have to find a place that they can be preserved, and it's not like they're looking for it. It's just wherever the animal falls. So if it's in a bog, great. If it's in some amber syrup, awesome. But that's usually not the case. It's usually something collapses and it gets broken down and it'll be reused. So thinking about the most parsimonious path in evolution, I'm not necessarily thinking about the fossil record or the ways that things happen, but when I think about adaptation in animals and how it's all based on where something is, like, you're born with a preset of tools that you can use. You can enhance any of those tools. Based on the environment, you're going to use certain tools because they're going to be more beneficial to you. And so you're going to exercise those tools, and your offspring are going to carry those tools, and everybody that's existing in this kind of environment, it's great. But the second that something comes in and, introduces now more opportunity, there's different things that you can do, but maybe you're so specialized to one thing that this is the only thing that you can do. And so you're not as adaptable. So there's a deep connection between the environment within which something exists and its tools for navigating that environment. And so somehow that comes back to that idea of knowing the right people, like having this mind to be able to determine which character is somebody that I want to associate with. Like this is the tool of our logic, our, you know, our brain. But sometimes that's at odds with what we do feel like we're drawn to here, like from this brain. So that seems to be kind of, to me, that crossroads is oftentimes between the head and the heart. Obviously, like I'm not saying anything new there, but that was just like a back of the house way to get to that idea with evolution and adaptation. So I guess, like, to put a ribbon on it, it's like navigating this realm of our life, this like love realm, the relationships realm. We have particular tools, and depending on the environment or the container of the relationship itself, like if the relationship is good, if there's benefit to that relationship, then I'm actually even bettering myself because this is a good partnership. Whereas if it's somebody that's dragging on me, then I'm not adapting, or I'm not I'm not adapting towards the better. I'm adapting towards this, lifestyle that doesn't suit me. It's not matched to me.
Mhm. Yeah, and we're fueled by our fossils, we're actually fueled by what's decayed. That gives us the memory and the energy and the pattern and the knowledge of how to move forward, of how to create preferred futures.
There's some sort of metaphor or analogy forming in my mind about moving from fossil fuel to solar energy.
Yeah.
Being fueled not by our past, but by the sun, by the good.
The ideal.
The
Yeah.
ideal.
I have a really wild haired-brained idea about this.
Yes.
So oftentimes when we talk about grief, it's this idea that it's calcified, that it's unmourned, it's unmoved pain that becomes hardened, fossilized, calcified. And I had this image after this Emerge conference come alive of like, wow, there's so much we've been burning all these fossil fuels on the external, but on the internal, there is a plethora of fossil fuels. And if collectively we actually took those fossils and moved them and like did that move of the alchemical process of transforming that hardness into movement, into tears, hydraulics, water energy.
Yeah.
Like that we could blast like an amazing amount of energy and power and change like so quickly. And so there was this feeling of like, oh my God, within us is an abundance of fossil fuel resources. If we harness that collectively and moved it and transformed it, we could by grieving together and celebrating because they're one and the same, they're lovers. It's actually, my mind can't even, it's beyond the sun's power even. It's nuclear energy.
It's enough power to empower the birth of the next Buddha or the next Christ.
Yeah, the next universe. I mean, it's like I think of all of the unmourned grief from wars that we haven't processed, that we hold as human beings, and it's tremendous. Actually, the potential there. So we need to stop burning on the outside, but burn on the inside.
I love that analogy, by the way. I was getting chills while you were talking about it.
Mm.
That's
too.
beautiful. We also collect a lot of waste. Like, you know, physically, we don't properly dispose of our waste. Okay, we've already had the poop conversation. I won't bring it back up, but-
But not just ours, like how many of us are just hoarding and hoarding, and then that's also like related to trust, right? And having a sense of believing that you will have what you need when the time comes, and you don't need to be in fear all the time. There's something I read today that you sent me, Holly, like the gene key thing, and I haven't finished reading it, but there was this line that really stuck with me about how fear, and I never thought of fear this way before. There was something along the lines of like fear is kind of not recognizing that the universe is there for you. Like the moment you forget that, the moment that you don't realize that the universe has you in their best interest, that's when fear happens. And I thought that was really interesting because, like, I don't know, like you said, even when you feel like you're at your most alone and you have nothing around, if you can still somehow trust that you're here for a reason, or you're here just to be, and that's enough, um then yeah, it feels like the universe has your back a bit. And when you forget that, that's when fear comes up. So I don't know, I thought that was interesting because I never thought of it that way before.
The earth and the universe is your lover. I mean, like, she loves the
Yeah.
shit out of you. Like, we forget that. We forget that actually the earth and the universe love us. And when we get broken, it's in our best interest. It's actually, it's out of love. It's time to change. It's time to grow. It's time to expand. It's time to mature. I love you. I'm doing this for you.
Just to think about that from the perspective of like how it feels to scold children, it hurts so bad to have to get onto my niece and nephew. I mean, they'll, you know, and when that response is crying or, you know, upset, or they just like kind of look at me like perplexed, like, did you really just yell at me? And then I have this conversation with them where I'm like teasing out the lesson and, you know, what just happened, kind of like giving them that third person perspective. So that's so interesting that that's somewhat of my relationship with life, is that I do, like, there are times where I'm like sobbing by myself, just like, why? Why me? Why do you keep doing this to me? And then that message is delivered to me in some sort of way, whether it's a sign or magic number or whatever it is. I find that kind of the thrilling part of the story. Like, okay, like I figured out the lesson on my own, but it was given to me. Like the you know, substance of that lesson will be given to me in some kind of symbol or sign or something. So yeah, there's it.
Mhm.
You know, it hurts acutely, but there's always some kind of redemptive something that comes out of it. And that's the sacrifice that I'm thinking of too. Like when I do, most of the time when I look at the chart or something like that, new moons, full moons, like I'm giving things to my compost pile. There's some sort of offering that's involved in that relationship.
I read something today that I just thought that the words were beautiful and it kind of kept popping up now. So I just want to read that. The love that life feels for life. That's what we're sharing. The love that life feels for life.
Mm. I feel like that's a nice place to maybe close the curtains for the
Mm. Yeah, no,
between.
I hear that, and I simultaneously feel like the smallest little molecule in the universe and everything. Like it's this weird thing, and I've had that feeling a few times this year, and whenever it happens, it's just like this. I don't know, it's crazy, but in a good way. Like some that integration of realizing, yeah, like how under some frame you are really the smallest thing, and then how you're also just you're everything because you're part of life, and life is everything. And yeah, I don't know, that reminded me of that. So thank you for that, because yeah.
Mm. Yeah, the love between the no thing and the everything. Kind of the ultimate lovers. Thank you, full moon, for bringing us together and guiding us in this as we
I
speak.
do feel that since we've switched from the new moon to the full moon, it's much more powerful. It's much more emotionally wrecking me.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting because the new moon's like going away to hide. And oftentimes those rituals will be very introverted and very introspective. And the full moon is, wild, especially this one. So, yeah.
Pregnant with
Do
love.
Hmm?
Oh, I just said she's pregnant with love.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to say that it's so interesting. This is the card we pulled because it is the Gemini card, the Lover's card.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like we planned that. That's one of those symbols to me of, oh, so we're reviewing the Gemini card on the day of the Gemini full moon. Interesting. That's cool. No big.
That sounds like maybe a sign that we're doing something right.
I take it that way. People do call me crazy, but
I'll take
This
the
works
garden
well.
over the desert, or I'll take them both. But, why not smell the roses rather than
yeah.
ignore them?
Yeah, exactly.
Do anyone have like a closing ritual or something?
You?
I know I said I didn't plan anything because I thought when lovers we're going to talk about romantic love, and I that's
I
just
thought
I just I'm completely hopeless in that. Like hopeless in the sense of really bad, and hopeless in the sense of I have no hope. So
Same.
no, but it's interesting because I feel like we talked a lot more about romantic love and men and stuff like that before. So yes, I somehow was expecting that as well today, and it just didn't happen. And I think that's interesting in itself.
so I do have hope now. So maybe just a short something, because I think our time is almost up.
Yeah. Lozelle, you're so good at I don't know if you feel comfortable, but I really just appreciate your guidance and
I would love to go into a visualization with you. So let's go and see what happens.
okay.
With closed eyes, let us all take a few breaths just to sink into the beauty that was created here today. Bella Eros. The beauty that is growing between us. The love that is growing between us. Now let's stand up in our minds and reach out our hands to each other. Though I feel like we never let go of each other's hands anymore. Let's grab it now with purpose. And with the hands of your sisters in yours, feel the love that flow through us. Feel the trust that is growing between us. And see the path that we are creating by repeatedly walking the same path slowly, over and over again. Daily habits, monthly habits, creating, inventio, a new kind of trust, a new kind of love. And as the sirens are roaring in the back, let's celebrate that trust and love by making final contributions for today's gathering. I invite everyone to offer us a final thought.
I wish I understood the beauty of leaves falling. To whom are we beautiful as we go? And I'm feeling an incredible appreciation for you all, for watching my leaf fall, for admiring that beauty as I go, and the incredible gift of also being able to watch your beauty as you go, which is really one and the same of mine.
Really feeling into the word vulnerability and offering something in your relationships, and not something tangible, but good character. And I think we build that with our relationship with divinity. So I think this Lover's card to me represents anything that we reflect on routinely, anything that we continue to think. That's a relationship that we have. And it's a relationship with something that's not tangible, but it's probably the most important relationship, in my opinion.
I think I'll try to do this. Let's see how it goes. But you, Sarah, mentioned vulnerability, so I might sing. And this is interesting because I've only ever sung this song to the moon and to another person I love. So it's not something I do often. But the song is about the moon, and it's a song in Spanish. So it's from my country. So let's see. Yo vi de una garza mora dándole combate a un río. Así es como se enamora tu corazón con el mío. Yo vi de una garza mora dándole combate a un río. Así es como se enamora. Así es como se enamora tu corazón con el mío. Tu corazón con el mío. Luna, luna llena menguante. Luna, luna llena menguante.
I am so grateful. I'm grateful for the gratitude that these meetings stir in me. I am grateful for the beauty that I see in the three of you and the attention that you give to my beauty. I am grateful for the vulnerability that you show, that you share, and that we can grow together in our mutual conversations, in our minds and with each other, building that indeed the most important relationship of all. And I'm so grateful for the ritual of song, the beauty of song, the power of song. And as we leave today, let's leave with songs in our hearts, singing to each other love and goodness and truth. Give the hands in yours a tight squeeze in love and trust, and let them go until we meet again. Then come back to these bodies, carrying that love and goodness and beauty and truth inside of you, ready to go out into the world, renewed and encouraged to further build this home that is growing between us. Amen.
Amen.